if you're watching this, Detbird, I think that your content's good. I've watched quite a few of your videos now, and I think that you're bringing a nuanced perspective to Dragon Ball that this community needs. So I hope you don't take anything I say in this personally. I'm not gonna say anything crazy, anyways. I just think you brought up some interesting points, and I have some counterpoints to it.
Now, let's dive into something I think we can all agree on, the Cell Saga. It's arguably the best arc in Dragon Ball, filled with
In Dragon Ball, that's that's a lot. You're saying a lot. They're all of Dragon Ball, the best arc. I respect that, but I still like the Frieza arc better. Just like seeing Vegeta's character growth, and this video is a lot about Vegeta.
some of the most iconic and impactful moments that define the series as a whole. The pinnacle of this saga.
Like we don't really get on-screen character growth of Vegeta in the Cell arc until Trunks dies. And don't get me wrong, that's a great moment and everything, but I think you need some more. At least in terms of like what does the best for Vegeta, but obviously if you're a big Gohan fan, this is the arc for you.
But let's not forget this saga wasn't just about Gohan. One of the things that made the Cell Saga so incredible is how it gave nearly every major character their moment in the spotlight. Vegeta and Trunks, for instance, had some truly memorable highlights.
Yeah, but there's the big problem that lots of the stuff with Vegeta happens off screen, and you just get implications.
What's fascinating, though, is how their relationship played out during this time. Trunks later reveals that they didn't train together as much as they trained separately. Vegeta, being the prideful warrior he is, rarely wanted to collaborate or work
Not
as a
gonna
team.
do that.
Instead, it's clear that their training sessions were more about individual growth, with moments of silent acknowledgement when they sensed each other growing stronger. We even get to see Trunks' recollection.
Now, that's my first point of contention. When did they really show that Vegeta acknowledged Trunks? I think the only time, to my recollection, is when he says that Trunks is almost as strong as him to Cell. Might be misremembering things, but
Of their time in the chamber. Vegeta's disdain towards working with Trunks is apparent.
this
It's
is
almost as if Vegeta saw it
heavily
as
anime only
competition
as
rather than
well.
teamwork. Despite this, there's a subtle implication that Vegeta was still aware of how powerful Trunks was becoming. This is best highlighted in Vegeta's line to Semi-Perfect Cell, where he says that although Trunks is weaker than him, he'd be strong enough to defeat Cell in that state.
See, and here, why, like, with Vegeta knew things that Trunks didn't, and he's so much more seasoned as a warrior. I don't think at all he miscalculated Trunks' battle power.
Which brings us to the only move Vegeta managed to land that inflicted any significant damage was his final flash.
I think that would have killed Cell if it hit his whole body. Well, probably not, knowing what we know afterwards when he self-destructs, but he would have. Can you imagine if it forced him to basically super perfect Cell that early?
Even that, however, proved to be ultimately futile. While this move caused some hype both in universe and for viewers, it was far from enough to turn the tide. Yet, despite witnessing this devastating failure firsthand, Trunks remained confident that he was still stronger than Vegeta. Now, this confidence alone doesn't prove anything, but it's worth noting and keeping in mind as we continue. After Cell knocks Vegeta out, Trunks steps in to take over. It's here that things get interesting. Trunks transforms into Super Saiyan Grade 3. When Trunks unleashes a bit of his power against Cell, the gap between him and Vegeta starts to become more apparent. But before
Krillin had no idea about this, but it's made clear that Vegeta did. Like, I'm not seeing a definitive gap being formed here.
diving deeper into who's stronger, it's important to address Grade 3 itself. This transformation provides a massive boost in raw strength, far exceeding Grade 2, but it comes at a cost: the speed. The bulky muscles of Grade 3 significantly reduce mobility, making it impractical.
It's heavily implied that Vegeta was far beyond Trunks. Just the fact that he was aware of the downfalls of Grade 3 and Trunks wasn't, like, as a fighter, that's gonna give him such an edge. Like, if he tried to pull this form on Vegeta, Vegeta would just mollywop him, like much like what Cell did.
Go into real
Maybe not to as much of an extent as Cell did, but he's still like Trunks is very unself-aware right now, and you're giving him a lot of benefit of the doubt and credit for someone who has shown that he doesn't understand these things.
Fight against a fast opponent. Now, here's where I think some of the confusion comes from. Many argue that whatever Trunks could do with Grade 3, Vegeta could do also if he wanted, but chose not to because he's a smarter, more experienced fighter. This claim is partially correct, but it's also partially wrong. When Cell senses Trunks during their encounter, he openly acknowledges that Trunks has a significant amount of hidden power buried within him, even stating that he is very strong.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that Trunks can tap into it right now. If you're like trying to infer some type of like rage boost or hybrid boost like Gohan has, he doesn't really have access to that just yet.
This is an important detail to consider as it comes before Trunks
Well, we see no evidence that he has access to that until Super basically.
unleashes what he calls his full power, which is simply him maximizing his Grade 3 transformation to its limits. Compare this to Cell's fight with Vegeta. At no point during their battle does Cell ever refer to Vegeta as very strong or
Yeah, but you have to also recognize that Vegeta and Cell had a thing going on, like a little rivalry, where Vegeta was like, I'm gonna smash you like to bits without even trying. And now Cell is flipping that on Vegeta, like there's an animosity here.
strong in general. Not even after Vegeta lands
And they both have Vegeta's ego as well. Like think about that. Like he's like, who's the stronger me, basically.
the final flash, a move hyped up to be his ultimate attack, does Cell grant him any level of acknowledgement. Instead, Cell brushes it off as a minor inconvenience and continues to toy with Vegeta for the entirety of the fight. This, in my opinion, pretty objectively confirms that even before Trunks buffed up to the point where he couldn't touch Cell, he was still stronger than Vegeta.
How is that objective at all? Like there's no clear objective route to that. It's still ambiguous.
Not to mention, the chapter is called Super Trunks Surpasses His Father.
Yeah, but in manga, anime, comics, everything, things get hyped up and he doesn't actually surpass him. The grade 3 makes Trunks think he has surpassed him. But Vegeta should have that as well. And even if Vegeta doesn't have that, it doesn't mean that he could beat him.
In the manga, ironically enough. And remember, this is before Trunks fully buffs up and can't touch Cell. Now, before we move
Yeah, who cares if that's before he fully buffs up? Like it's the hook for the chapter.
on to the second part of this video, I want to make a clear distinction. This is Ultra Super Saiyan Trunks, and this is Grade 3 Trunks. Yes, they're both Trunks in Grade 3, but there is a difference. This is the Trunks that gets the strong potential statements and the Trunks that's still not too slow enough to fight Cell. This
Yes, he has the potential, but he isn't there yet. It's still locked away and he doesn't ever really tap into it. He went the wrong route to get power. That's the point.
Trunks over here is Grade 3 Trunks, the form mocked for its insanely low speed and the form all the Saiyans can do if they wanted, including Cell. Okay, now that we made that clear, let's proceed. Following their humiliating defeats by the hands of Cell, both Vegeta and Trunks decide to re-enter the Room of Spirit and Time for a second round of intense training. While their first trip provided significant power boosts, it's clear that they felt the need to further bridge the gap between themselves and Cell before the Cell games. This decision highlights their shared determination.
I also have a very I think maybe this right here not close. I think that might be like a little clickbaity because like you gotta do it, but at the same time I highly disagree. How can you say that it's not close at all? Like that's mind blowing. And I hope it's just to try to get views that you said that and you don't actually believe that.
Despite their different approaches to combat and growth. Fast forward to the Cell games where Cell creates miniature versions of himself, known as the Cell Juniors, to toy with the Z Fighters and provoke Gohan into unleashing his hidden power. These Cell Juniors proved to be a major threat, pushing even the strongest warriors to their limits. According to Daizenshu 7, each of the children then has roughly the same amount of power and speed as Cell. This statement implies that Cell Juniors were immensely powerful and were holding back significantly as they refrained from outright killing most of the Z Fighters. What's particularly fascinating during this chaotic battle is the difference in performance between Vegeta and Trunks. In the manga, Cell himself comments on the situation, stating that Vegeta and Trunks are the only ones who can properly hold their ground against the Cell Juniors. This indicates that their second round in the Room of Spirit and Time, the two Saiyans were able to elevate their power and skills to levels that made them somewhat competitive against the Cell Juniors.
Well, yeah, but we don't really have anything to compare the Cell Juniors to because like Goku's exhausted. So I'm not really sure like it could they could have grown almost nothing at all and still been able to hold their own against Cell Juniors.
The implication that Vegeta and Trunks became relative in power after their second trip to the Woman Spirit in Time is significant. Initially, Trunks had the edge over Vegeta, thanks to his willingness to push himself further during the
You're making an assumption there again. Like there's no strong evidence towards that claim.
first year in the time chamber. However, the second year of training, it's clear that Vegeta was able to close the gap, matching Trunks in power to a degree that led to statements suggesting they were now on equal footing. I'm sure it's statements like these that led many people to believe that Vegeta and Trunks were equal all along, but that's simply not the case. Their relativity only became evident after the second year of training in the Hyperbolic Time Chamber. Before this, Trunks held a clear advantage in terms of raw power, albeit at the cost of efficiency due to the limitations of Super Saiyan Grade 3. Interestingly, while the manga describes them as being relative during the Cell games, a closer look at their performances against the Cell Juniors paints a slightly different picture. Vegeta is shown fighting against a single Cell Junior throughout the entire struggle, giving it his all but eventually ending up on the ground, clearly exhausted. Trunks, on the other hand, starts by facing one Cell Junior but is later seen fending off two Cell Juniors simultaneously towards the end.
Yeah, it doesn't really mean much. And again, like you said, it's anime only, but also Vegeta was going for the kill, you know? And Trunks, does he even have a technique that we know of that could potentially destroy one of these?
Of the battle. The difference in performance, while subtle, does suggest that Trunks may still hold a slight edge over Vegeta, even after the second round of training.
Maybe. I'll give you that. Maybe.
Of course, one could argue that the two are relative based on the manga statements, but I think this detail is worth mentioning regardless. So, there you have it. In my opinion, Vegeta versus Trunks isn't a close fight. The statements made by Cell, Krillin, and himself is more than enough proof.
No, because Krillin, first of all, he's basing it only on raw power. He hasn't experienced it yet before. Like Vegeta again could have probably done this. And now what I think would be more interesting, again, like if Cell was viewing him as like a kid and almost like Vegeta was having pride in his own son through Cell, that's something that could be there as well. And on top of that, Cell doesn't have the animosity for Trunks like he did for Vegeta. Vegeta almost stopped him from becoming perfect. Trunks did too, but you know, we're talking about like Vegeta physically was beating the hell out of semi-perfect Cell, and he had a vendetta, I think.
As for the second part of the Cell saga during the Cell
And
game, you
you also can't like expect like it wouldn't be interesting if he just treated both Trunks and Vegeta the same way. Like they're different characters, and he's going to speak to them differently.
could argue that they're relative. In the anime, Trunks may hold a slight advantage, though in the manga,
Okay, and I think that's about it. Thank you. I hope you see this, and maybe you will respond back to me.